Note, Clinton campaign spokesman Brian Fallon said last night, quote, Hillary Clinton has consistently taken responsibility for her decision to use a single email account, and she has said for over a year now it was a mistake and she regrets it. But this email issue continues to linger, with more potentially coming out ahead of Election Day. Martha?
So, Mike, how's the Clinton campaign responding at this point?
Well, they are responding to attacks on the Clinton Foundation by essentially saying that they will change procedures if Hillary Clinton is elected president. They are also punching back. There's Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta attacking Donald Trump, saying essentially that Trump needs to come clean about some of his business practices, about his complex network of for-profit businesses that are hundreds of millions of dollars in debt to the big banks. And Clinton running mate Tim Kaine defended the foundation's work.
Today, you raised some questions about the Clinton Foundation. The Clinton Foundation is a nonprofit organization that is a world-class charity. It's provided life-saving AIDS drugs to 11.5 million people. And all the donors to the foundation have been disclosed. And the foundation has said, I'll go further, we'll restructure itself completely if Hillary Clinton is elected president. That's a pledge.
It is clear the Clinton campaign and its allies took attacks on the foundation very seriously with their swift response. Martha?
All right, Mike, thank you.
Well, meanwhile, on the Republican side, as Mr. Trump calls for that special prosecutor to investigate Mrs. Clinton, there are no new questions this morning on whether or not he is softening his stance on immigration. His campaign denying that, but they've canceled what was supposed to be a big speech on that issue on Thursday in Colorado. John Roberts reporting live outside of Trump Tower here in New York City on the Trump campaign. John, let's first start with the Clinton situation and those emails and Mr. Trump's call for a special prosecutor.
Eric, good morning to you. You know, there's an age-old tactic in politics, and that is when your candidate's when your opponent's campaign is running off a cliff, don't do anything to interfere with that. And that's the philosophy that Donald Trump is employing this week. He was going to be talking all about immigration with a big speech in Denver planned for Thursday. They've decided that because of this controversy involving the new 15,000 emails that had just been discovered, as well as all of this news about the Clinton Foundation and whether or not people were buying access to the State Department, they've just decided we're going to sit back and let that drive the news cycle. But of course, they're also going to throw a little bit of wood on the fire. Last night in Akron, Ohio, Donald Trump insisting that a special prosecutor has to look into this because the Obama administration, Department of Justice, can't be trusted to conduct a fair and impartial investigation. Here's what Trump said last night.
The Clintons made the State Department into the same kind of pay-for-play operation as the Arkansas government. The Justice Department is required to appoint an independent special prosecutor because it has proven itself to be really, sadly, a political arm of the White House.
That is the point that the Trump campaign is going to continue to drive home. They released emails about it this morning. He's likely to talk at length with Sean Hannity about it in the town hall. He's likely to talk about it tonight in Austin at that big rally, as well as one tomorrow in Tampa, and then tomorrow night in Jackson. Plenty of opportunity this week, Eric, for Donald Trump to drive that point home.
And absolutely. And John will be dealing with this and going through it and reporting on it through the next 2 hours. John Roberts reporting from Trump Tower. Thank you. Martha?
So let's dive a little bit deeper into this whole email issue. In one exchange, longtime Bill Clinton aide Doug Band writes to Huma Abedin, the CP, or Crown Prince of Bahrain, is in town and would like to see then Secretary of State Clinton, calling him a, quote, good friend of ours. She replies saying that the Crown Prince has tried to meet with her through, quote, normal channels and that Clinton didn't want to commit. But just 2 days later, the Crown Prince suddenly got his meeting with Secretary Clinton, and that is just one of the examples that has cropped up here. So what's the meaning of it and how serious is it? Joining us, Byron York, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner and a Fox News contributor. Byron, good morning to you.
Good morning,
clearly,
Martha.
Hillary Clinton didn't seem to think that this was a serious thing at all. She really laughed the whole thing off with Jimmy Kimmel last night.
You know, she's going to have to do more than that, because this actually does seem to illustrate what Donald Trump was talking about when he said pay for play. You have this foreign official comes to the U.S., wants to meet with the Secretary of State, can't get a meeting through regular channels, goes to the Clinton Foundation, where Bahrain has given a lot of money to the Clinton Global Initiative especially, and the Clinton Foundation goes back to Hillary Clinton's office, said, hey, this guy's a good friend of ours, you know, you might want to let him in, and he gets his meeting. So it really does appear to be kind of a classic pay-for-play situation.
You know, if at the very least, just the disclosure that these aides are spending all of this time on this Clinton Foundation stuff, right? Going back and forth, answering these emails, setting up meetings. I mean, this is when Syria is imploding, ISIS is on the rise, this is the State Department. It seems that and no doubt they were dealing with important business as well, but there's a lot of time and effort going into this stuff, Byron.
Absolutely, and you have to remember there's kind of a revolving door as well. Cheryl Mills, who was mentioned earlier, who was Hillary Clinton's chief of staff at the State Department, came to the State Department from the Clinton Foundation, where she had been on the board of directors, and after Hillary Clinton left the left the State Department, Cheryl Mills went back to the foundation. So these are people who are longtime employees of the Clintons, and if Mrs. Clinton is in government, they go into government. If Mrs. Clinton is out of government, they're with the foundation. And
isn't Bill Clinton's sort of accession that if indeed she's elected, he would step aside, that he wouldn't be on the board anymore? Doesn't that sort of, it's an admission that there is some inherent conflict of interest, or at least a perception of one?
It's a huge open door for Republicans, not just for Donald Trump, but for the Republicans on Capitol Hill who've been calling for more investigation, not just of the foundation, but also an investigation of the FBI's investigation of the emails, because this is basically not just the Clinton Foundation, but now Bill Clinton himself saying that if Hillary Clinton is elected, they'll take a hands-off role in the Clinton Foundation.
Just quickly, Byron, one last thing for you. Why didn't the FBI investigate her under oath? And why were they only scratching down notes and not recording everything for public record?
Well, I'm told, this is standard procedure. There's a report called an FBI 302 form where if you do an interview with someone, agents take detailed notes. But this is by hand, sometimes with a computer, but they take detailed notes. They don't make a transcript. They don't make a recording. I'm told that sometimes changes, that is sometimes used these days, but it was not used in this. And to add to that, now that Republicans on Capitol Hill have gotten to see some of these FBI documents from the investigation, they're saying the FBI has heavily redacted them. They've blacked out large parts of them, and Republicans don't know why these parts were blacked out. So you're going to see a fight over that as well.
It's a very legitimate question. You would think in such a high-profile case there would be a transcript of this conversation, of her answers to all of the questions, which apparently just does not exist, which I think
also remember, Martha,
yeah, Byron.
They did that interview 3.5 hours with Hillary Clinton on a Saturday afternoon, and within 48 hours they came out and exonerated her. So you have to wonder, were they looking for so-called process crimes, whether she was telling the truth about every single aspect of this, or were they in a kind of a rush to make a decision?
Looking to put it behind them, perhaps. Byron, thank you very much. Good to see you. So President Obama heads to Louisiana later this morning after getting backlash for spending the weekend playing golf instead of surveying the damage from that deadly flooding. Sean Hannity spoke with victims in Baton Rouge, one woman telling him that she's not surprised by the president's lack of action.
I hate to say this.
No, say it.
Because I love America. I don't want to live anywhere else, and I know our crew does the best that they can do.
Right.
But I don't think Washington gives a hoot about anybody but their pockets.
Did you see the president playing golf during all this?
No, I didn't, because I don't have a TV.
Louisiana Congressman John Fleming joins us now. Congressman, good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Martha. Yes.
So the president heads there today. Is it too late?
Well, Martha, it's never too late, but my goodness, look how long it's been over a week since the floods began. And look, I got to tell you, I was in Baton Rouge when the water was rising. I visited churches. I visited low-rent housing in Washington and Eunice, Louisiana. I went to Denham Springs. I was there when Donald Trump and Mike Pence were there. That's ground zero, a 1,000-year flood. And the devastation is unbelievable, but neighbors are helping neighbors in Louisiana.
In terms of a presidential response, you know, I know that you say you don't need to come right to the scene right away, but what would you have preferred in terms of a response from the president? What would have been the most helpful?
Well, I've got to tell you, Mayor Landry in Denham Springs, again, ground zero, told me that after 6 days they had seen no federal officials. No one had brought water to them or food except for faith-based organizations. The president should have been there hearing their story. And, you know, there's something about heart here. There's something about emotion, psychological support. These people are crying on people's shoulders. They cried on my shoulders. They were talking about memories that were destroyed in their homes. And the president out playing golf. It really makes people in Louisiana angry and sad that the president seems to have turned his back on the people of Louisiana in their time of greatest need.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the right words, even from a distance, go a long way, because these people feel like the country forgot about them and that they weren't, you know, everybody was on vacation and not paying attention when this was happening to them. So, you know, in terms of the visit that you had from Donald Trump and Mike Pence, what was your perception of that? Because some people felt it was, you know, sort of election politics. What was your sense of what they were like on the ground?
Not at all. They were cheered. They were very much appreciated. The people of Louisiana appreciate leadership. And I really have to believe the president wouldn't be showing up in Louisiana today but for the leadership of Donald Trump that actually showed up in the time of need most for the people of Louisiana. So really, heart and emotion is a lot. Psychological support. If the president is not going to show up, then, of course, there's a lot of concern over the fact that FEMA and the National Guard or others who may not be on the ground the way they should, we have to ask the question, well then if the president's not here, no wonder there's a delay in other types of services.
And it's kind of shocking given the criticism that President Bush got from President Obama, Senator Obama at the time, that he wouldn't be especially sensitive to this situation and want to make sure that he was, you know, doing all that he could and more.
Well, the president himself criticized President Bush while he was a senator. Senator Obama at the time criticized President Bush, and all the president did was try to avoid creating any problems. He didn't want to create a disturbance, but he regrets not having shown up. President Obama should have learned from that experience. He should be here, should have been here, frankly, a week ago.
Congressman, thank you. No doubt when he gets there, he will see that devastation firsthand, and it's striking. Everybody who's reporting to us from there just says how unbelievably devastating it is. So we send our good thoughts to you all, and we hope that you continue to get the help that you need. Thank you very much, Congressman.
So much.
Good to see you this morning.
Martha, would-be suicide. Much for your insight.
So it was more than a year ago when Hillary Clinton said that she had deleted her personal email because there was nothing worth reading in them. Remember this?
I chose not to keep my private personal emails. Emails about planning Chelsea's wedding or my mother's funeral arrangements, condolence notes to friends, as well as yoga routines, family vacations.
Well, we know from the FBI testimony that there were indeed work-related emails among those, and what a difference a year makes now. We learned that thousands of new emails talk about quite a bit more than yoga. In fact, I don't think they found any yoga emails in there as far as I know. So people want answers. They want to know about the FBI investigation and how it operated. All of this is gaining steam.
Do you think that's just a coincidence? Make no mistake, when you donate millions and millions of dollars, what are you asking for?
This morning, stunning new evidence pointing towards a potential pay-for-play operation between Hillary Clinton's State Department and the Clinton Foundation. You know, thousands of newly uncovered emails and phone messages have revealed prominent foundation donors received special access to then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, even though Mrs. Clinton and the Clinton campaign insist there was no wrongdoing. Not true, says Judicial Watch, the conservative advocacy group that brought that Freedom of Information Act lawsuit to get the emails. It says the new emails are proof of shocking conflicts of interest and bad faith.
Mrs. Clinton swore under penalty of perjury that as best as she knew, all these records, all government records have been turned over. But this court hearing today demonstrated that wasn't the case.
Well, the new batch may include thousands of work-related emails, but you know, Mrs. Clinton claimed repeatedly that she had already turned over all of her work-related emails to the State Department.
We went through a thorough process to identify all of my work-related emails and deliver them to the State Department.
I turned over everything I was obligated to turn over, and then I moved on. I turned over everything that I could imagine.
When I see you are interviewed, you make a point of saying, I turned over everything.
All my work-related emails.
How do you know that?
I know that because there was an exhaustive search done under the supervision of my attorneys.
Well, that apparently is not the case. Rich Lowry, editor of National Review and Fox News contributor. Brad Woodhouse, president of Correct the Record and former communications director for the DNC and member of Hillary PAC. Welcome to you both.
Hi, Eric.
Washington Post this morning, front page. Donors given access to Clinton. I mean, Rich, they told us this isn't the case. Campaign manager Abby Mook says there's a complete separation, full transparency, nothing to see here, folks. What does this mean?
This is a gross distortion, Eric, of how our government is supposed to work. People gave money to the Clinton Foundation. In exchange, they got access to high government officials who are supposed to be focused on doing the public's work, not doing the work of some other private interest. So this is horrifying, and a lot of the media is trying to set up this new distinction. Oh, they're just paying for access. We have no evidence they actually bought policy or state action. But buying access is bad enough. It's disgusting, and it's why people think our government is broken and can't be trusted.
Brad, how do you explain this?
Well, look, Rich, first of all, you have no proof that anyone bought access. I mean, the fact is there are plenty of people who would give to a foundation. They may give to the Clinton Foundation. They may give to the Gates Foundation. They may give to any foundation in America, and they might still have business before the State Department. That doesn't mean ergo that they have.
Have you seen the emails, Brad?
Access.
Have you seen the emails where Doug Band is emailing Huma Abedin saying this guy is very important to us, he needs a meeting, and she's responsive to that? Brad, you can't deny it. It is in black and white in these emails that Hillary Clinton tried to hide from the public for exactly this reason.
That doesn't mean that through other means or other channels, those people wouldn't have gotten the same meeting. I mean, you act like, Rich, you've never sent an email to anyone asking them for a meeting.
Let me interrupt you both. Wait a minute, Rich. Sure. Brad, this is not supposed to happen. They were not supposed to go around the loop over to the Clinton Foundation. Let me read you two emails specifically that deal with a big donor to the global initiative. This guy's name is Casey Wasserman. He's a sports marketing agent. Mrs. Clinton's having a fundraiser. Before I read this, I'm going to tell you about the guy in Beverly Hills. His foundation apparently gave $5 to $10 million to the Clinton Foundation, hired Bill Clinton for like $3 million in a consulting fee. And here's the email. They're trying to get apparently a visa for a British soccer player, which they can't get. So what do they do? They go right to Huma. And here's the email from her. I doubt we can do anything, but maybe we can help with an interview. I'll ask. I got this now. Makes me nervous to get involved, but I'll ask. Band replies, then don't. Mrs. Abedin, Huma, is admitting right there she's nervous. She knows something is wrong.
She basically
realizes
said no.
This is not good.
She said,
in not so
many words, she declined. In not so many words, she declined the request. I mean, that's a courteous way of declining a request. I mean,
Rich,
what you want to do is paint the worst possible.
I got to give Brad credit. He is earning his pay this morning. This is a real manful effort. But there's a reason Casey Wasserman, he could have just given to the Red Cross. He didn't have to give to the Clinton Foundation. And why all these political donors, why all these foreign interests? Hold on, Brad. The reason why they gave the Clinton Foundation is they knew Doug Band worked for a former president, was tied in perhaps to a future president and to the current Secretary of State, and they could get government favors for it. Brad, that is just plain as day. There's no way to deny it. Don't even try.
That is not plain as day. That is not plain as day. You don't have a shred of evidence to suggest
that
anything untoward occurred. I mean, emails about meetings are what, Rich? They're emails about meetings.
Brad, that's access. That's what the critics are claiming. Quickly, 30 seconds left. Brad, what's going to happen? Is she going to get indicted? What's going to happen?
Well, of course she's not going to get indicted. She already hadn't gotten indicted. We already had an FBI director that Republicans love and have praised through the years who said that no reasonable prosecutor would bring any case related to these emails. They have a dumpster fire of a candidate on their side, so they want to continue to peck at this issue to try to save down ballot candidates from Donald Trump.
In sheer political terms, Eric, I think the Clinton email, just the fact that she used the private email, is baked into the cake. People have decided about that. But what they haven't decided about, what they haven't really heard for, is this kind of pay for play. And it's a major vulnerability of hers and a major test for Donald Trump. He needs to make sure this week is about nothing else. Nothing else except for these Clinton emails.
Well, she told us it's all about the yoga and the wedding, and all this stuff was turned over, and that's not the case. Brad and Rich, thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Well, get them out. Get them out.
So the head of the European Union saying that national borders are, quote, the worst invention ever. Jean-Claude Juncker says that he wants to open all of the borders between the countries in Europe, this despite a flood of refugees from the Middle East and the recent terror attacks in Germany, France, and Belgium. Joining me now with his thoughts on this, John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the UN and a Fox News contributor. Good to have you here this morning, sir.
Good morning.
So what do you think about those comments?
Well, cue up the John Lennon music. Look, what you're hearing here is the essence of the European Union theology, that war in Europe was caused by nation states. The way you eliminate war in Europe is eliminate nation states, and it's one reason, I think the most profound reason, why the British just voted to leave. They actually like their country and would prefer to keep it rather than see it in a borderless Europe like Juncker's imagining. But the practical consequences really do, though, go to day-to-day security for average Europeans with this flood of refugees covering so many terrorists, with the terrorist attacks we've seen. A borderless Europe looks a lot less attractive today than it did back in the dreams of the founders of the EU.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the sentiment in Europe is going in the actual opposite direction of what he's talking about. Is that your sense, or is that just what we, sort of what we read about how people are feeling in Europe?
No, I think that is an increasing mood in the public as a whole. It's certainly been spurred by the refugee flows, but it's been building for a long time, and it goes to the basic flaws in the European Union project. This is a top-down initiative driven by people who have concluded on an ideological basis that a Europe without nation states, making a superstate out of all of Europe, will stop war on the continent, and that's what they're about. And it's failing in many respects. It's failing because the euro, the common currency, is failing. It's failing because people are rarely consulted about what they think of this project, and when they do in referenda in country after country, they tend to vote against it. So when you add on the terrorist problem, the terrorist threat caused by the refugee flows, it's no wonder it's coming to a boiling point.
You're also, of course, sensing these themes in the election process here at home as well. And Donald Trump talks a lot about the fact that you can't be a country unless you actually have borders. And here's a little piece of one of his ads that goes to that theme from what you're seeing debated in Europe, right?
Well, I think there are two things going on. One, inside Europe, which has never been a nation state like the United States, they're as much worried about, as they used to say in Britain, the plumber from Poland, as they are coming from people from outside. This is not fundamentally a racist argument. This is an argument about jobs and the economy. But now on top of that, there really are security concerns, as we've seen from attack after attack, of people from outside of Europe entirely. The Middle East has wanted to move to Europe for 1,000 years or so. They're having pretty spectacular luck these past few years.
So in terms of Juncker, what's his future, and is there traction to his statement, or, is he isolated within the EU and the other sort of heads of those states?
Well, let's be clear what he is exactly. He's the president of the European Commission. That is to say, he is the top bureaucrat in the European Union. He represents nobody except the bureaucrats in Brussels. And it's this kind of extraterrestrial statement by him and other Eurocrats, as they're called, that has helped fuel the anti-EU sentiment within all the member states to a lesser or greater extent. And to me, it highlights the virtues of just good old-fashioned representative government. Before you put somebody in a position to say something like that, you ought to see if he can get elected by real people outside of his native country, Luxembourg.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting to watch the different elections in Europe and this theme and how it plays out. I remember, the new mayor in Rome won in part based on the fact that she wants to sort of crack down on refugee infiltration into Italy. When you look at these elections, Sarkozy has now announced that he's going to run again in France. What kind of impact do you see on the elections in Europe from this?
Well, I think it's going to be very significant. You know, Sarkozy, who was thought to be finished in politics, is now coming back, waging, as he did earlier in his career, effectively a law and order campaign. And he has said very expressly that if, as happened, Britain voted to leave the European Union, there needed to be an entirely new EU treaty put on the table dealing with questions like cross-boundary movement of peoples. And so I don't have any doubt this will be a major element in Sarkozy's campaign.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Bolton. Good to see you.
Thank you, Martha.
Martha's Newsroom. I'm Martha McCallum.
Martha, good to still stay with you this morning.
Good to have you, Eric.
And hello, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn. I'm in for Bill Hammer. Well, according to the latest reports, this is the suspect. He is identified as 20-year-old Wasil Faruqi. He recently, they say, traveled to Turkey, and he may have been trying to sneak into Syria and join ISIS. Here's the police dispatch chatter after the attack.
There's one male patient with a neck laceration. There's a female with a leg laceration. She's the one they're applying a tourniquet to.
Peter Doocy live in Washington. So, Peter, can you confirm that the police are investigating a connection to ISIS here?
We can, Martha, and it's because the attacker was reportedly screaming Allah Akbar while he tried to behead one of the victims. And we're told the Roanoke Police Department immediately called the FBI when details like that started to come in. So now the Bureau's special agent in charge of the Richmond Division is telling us that, quote, the FBI is working with the police department following the incident that occurred on Saturday evening. While I cannot discuss the details of the investigation at this time, I do want to reassure the community that we are working to determine the nature of the incident. The man in custody charged with 2 counts of aggravated malicious wounding is Wasil Faruqi. He's 20 years old, and he's being held right now at the Western Virginia Regional Jail without bond. ABC News is reporting that Faruqi did recently try to sneak into Syria to link up with Islamic State fighters, but Saturday night his trip was to the Pines apartment in Roanoke. That's where he ambushed a man and a woman with a knife. The man was able to fight back enough so that Faruqi fled, and both victims did end up severely injured. 911 callers indicate that the crime scene was very bloody. Martha.
It's an awful attack, and you can see why this line of investigation is being picked up. Was there any connection, though, that they can find between the attacker and these victims? Did he know them?
No. As of right now, authorities are saying that they do not think Faruqi knew the man that he tried to behead or this woman that he stabbed so badly with a knife. It's interesting that Roanoke PD is saying that the victims may have been chosen randomly, so the concern does become the inspiration, and that's why the feds are so interested in figuring out quickly if the inspiration was the Islamic State.
Yeah,
Martha.
Disturbing. All right, Peter, thank you very much.
And meanwhile, Martha, there is brand new evidence of a possible pay-for-play situation between the Clinton Foundation and Hillary Clinton's State Department, directly contradicting what Mrs. Clinton and the Clinton campaign has always told us. You know, we've been reporting this morning on those emails, but there are also newly released phone records, adding more fuel to the growing political firestorm just weeks before the election. These new phone records show a senior executive at the Clinton Foundation was in regular contact with Cheryl Mills. Cheryl Mills was Hillary Clinton's chief of staff at the State Department. Well, this has caused Donald Trump now to call for the Justice Department to appoint a special prosecutor.
Pay the Clinton Foundation huge sums of money and throw in some big speaking fees for Bill Clinton, and you got to play. You got to do what you wanted to do. This is in front of the State Department. And long before that, you should have seen what they were doing in Arkansas. Same old story, folks.
Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen now joins us with more. You know, James, we've been talking about the emails in the last hour, but now these are phone messages that seem to add a whole new dimension to the story.
That's right, Eric. Good morning. And these are exclusive to Fox News. We're talking about nearly 180 pages of official telephone logs spanning 2010 to 2012 and kept by assistants to the woman who served as chief of staff to Hillary Clinton at the State Department. Cheryl Mills was a longtime confidant of the Clintons, and her office fielded inquiries from a wide cross-section of people seeking the secretary's ear, from celebrities like Sean Penn to Democratic Party establishment figures like Vernon Jordan. By an exponential factor, however, the greatest number of messages, 148 in all, were left by Laura Graham, then the chief operating officer for the Clinton Foundation. One of Graham's messages referenced "our boss" without identifying that individual. Elsewhere, Graham referenced former President Clinton, using his initials in a message that read, "Please call. WJC is looking for her," meaning Graham, "and she wants to talk to you," meaning Mills, before she talks to him. The State Department said yesterday nothing in Secretary Clinton's ethics agreement with the Obama White House constraining her dealings with the foundation applied to her aides.
And I would just add to that the department's actions under Secretary Clinton were always taken with the intent to advance our foreign policy interests as set forth by this administration, and with no other intent in mind than that.
The logs were released by the State Department to the conservative advocacy group Citizens United, which has mounted a lengthy legal battle over access to these documents and the Clinton emails. Eric.
Yeah, James, and now Republicans, some are talking about possible perjury investigation.
Yes, that dates back, of course, to testimony about the server from Mrs. Clinton before the House Select Benghazi Committee. Not surprisingly, with respect to these documents, key Republicans, like the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, see the Graham-Mills relationship as part of a bigger pattern involving these two entities.
Do we really think it's just a coincidence that the Clinton Foundation and their donors just happen to have more interaction with the Chief of Staff to the Secretary of State than anybody else? Do you think that's just a coincidence?
Clinton campaign spokesman Brian Fallon tweeted yesterday, "The Clinton Foundation is a charity that helps people around the world. It's already announced major steps it will take if Hillary Clinton wins the White House." Eric.
All right, James. I mean, they always said there was no conflict of interest, but it seems some evidence to the contrary may be piling up. Thank you. Martha?
So the State Department also scrambling to explain nearly 15,000 new emails that were uncovered by the FBI, which Hillary Clinton never turned over to the State Department.
She said that she confirmed for the court that she had handed over, or believed that she had handed over, all of the work-related emails that were contained on ClintonEmail.com that were in her custody, that she believed were potentially federal records. And she provided all of those, as I said, that were in her possession to the department. The FBI, obviously, in the course of its investigation, seems to have found other documents.
Tucker Carlson is editor of The Daily Caller, co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, and a Fox News contributor. Tucker, good morning. Good to see you this morning.
Hey, Martha.
You know, I mean, it's very difficult when you have a separate server where you're sort of running your own off-site government entity that is processing stuff for the foundation and for the State Department. I mean, the fact that everyone's just supposed to accept that this is fine and that she said she turned it over, but she didn't, and there's thousands more of them that they're finding out there, and we're just supposed to laugh it off on Jimmy Kimmel and just pretend like there's no there, or at least nothing to talk about or look at, is quite striking.
Well, it's a tragedy. I mean, it discredits not simply Hillary Clinton and her presidential campaign, but the U.S. government. I mean, she ran the State Department, and they allowed this, and now you're watching State Department flacks have to spin for her. The whole thing is gravely embarrassing to the country. It makes our government look incompetent in third world, and for good reason. And by the way, does anybody think that this is the end of it? I mean, 15,000 new emails that nobody knew about last week. What comes next? What's in those? I mean, you see what I'm saying? So this is going to be a story that unfolds for years, and it has all kinds of very set implications. And keep in mind, Hillary Clinton, as of today, is likely to be the next president of the United States. What does that mean? It means it's going to be pretty hard for her to dodge this story if elected, and that's bad for all of us.
And I know that you're critical of the press on this, because if the precedent is set that, you know, we're not supposed to care about this, and this is not a story, and that it's it's all sort of designed to make sure that Hillary Clinton doesn't get elected, that people need to do their jobs and look into this story. If that goes by the wayside and she's elected president, well, why would they be careful with, any of this stuff? Because it's unlikely to change.
Exactly. The press has a meaningful role in keeping the government honest. That's the whole reason that we exist. Look, we knew years ago that Huma Abedin, her closest aide, was also working at the Clinton Foundation. People basically ignored it. Look, here's the truth, and everyone knows it. Virtually everyone in the press wants Hillary Clinton to get elected. Fine. They sympathize with her. They're on her side ideologically. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't cover her. They're ceasing to cover her campaign because they fear it will help get Donald Trump elected. I don't think there's anything she could do that would warrant coverage. I mean, if she got caught taking bribes from North Korea and passed out cold in the middle of an interview, it would get 300 words in Politico. They're just not going to pay attention to it. So what does this mean if she does get elected? And again, as of today, she's likely to. I'm not voting for her. I'm just telling you that's what the polls say. If she gets elected, are they just not going to cover the bad parts?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the press's relationship with people in power has changed in a way that's ominous.
Yeah. In terms of this Colin Powell part of the story, she, attempted to sort of sweep him into her vortex and say, it's the same thing. See, apples and apples. Here's Karl Rove on that last night.
He had an account on an established web hosting company, AOL.com. He used it for intercommunications inside the State Department, but it wasn't a private homebrew server stuck in his basement. And between the time that he served as Secretary of State and the time that she came in as Secretary of State, the rules were tightened and department officials were told explicitly, do not use private email accounts.
Very different.
Well, yeah, and poor Colin Powell. This is not a new thing. They've been trying to implicate him in this for the past year. Since this story broke, one of the talking points has been, well, Colin Powell did it too. And he hasn't responded. And Rove makes, of course, the key point, which is he used AOL for part of his communication. She used her own homebrew server exclusively for her public communication, for her work communication. There's really no comparison at all. I don't think he wanted to speak up about this. I don't think he wants to be involved in this presidential race at all. And yet she forced it. Her aides forced it because this was their first talking point. Well, Powell did it too. Are you attacking him too?
Yeah.
You feel sorry for him. He doesn't have anything to do with this at all.
Just one more. I'm just curious what you think about the FBI investigation given all this, because that's the thing that keeps coming up to me. I mean, poor Martha Stewart, lied to an FBI investigator and went to jail for it. And Hillary Clinton, they sort of took some notes, and there's no accountability for what she said to them in that investigation at all, despite the fact that James Comey wanted to make it very clear, oh no, this is an investigation.
Oh, which is the most striking part of the whole story, and it's gotten undercovered. I live in Washington. I know a lot of people who've gotten in trouble with the FBI, and most of them get in trouble because they lie in their conversations with federal agents, which, as you noted, is a felony. I've never heard, ever, of a situation where a subject of an investigation is invited in and there's no being sworn in, there's no tape recording of the conversation, there's literally no transcript of it. Is that the rule that I'm going to live by next time I commit a felony? Am I going to? Are they going to do that to me?
No. Yours will be recorded, Tucker. I guarantee
you. Think? Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And it's a big part of the story. We're going to keep digging in. Tucker, thank you. Always great to see you.
Thanks, Martha.
That was a great point. Great point.
I don't understand, how you can speak to the FBI and there's no record, no transcript of what you said. And then when James Comey was asked in open congressional hearing, well, did she lie when she spoke to the FBI? He said, no. Well, how do you know if there's no comparison of what she said to what the record is? Yeah. So we're going to stay on this part of the story.
Ask Martha Stewart how she feels about this.
Good question.
I know.
She was cooking the other day. I saw her downstairs, so maybe we'll bring her back.
All right. Well, meanwhile, that Hillary Clinton supporters, they say all this talk of favors for big donors, it's nothing new. Politicians do it all the time. But one columnist is making the argument that Clintons take this to a whole new level. He brands them Clinton Incorporated, saying we've never seen anything of this magnitude ever before.
And Donald Trump has now delayed a major immigration speech amid reports that he may be softening his hardline stance on this. So which is it? What is it going to be? Will there be a deportation force that he has spoken about in the past? We're going to speak to one of his senior advisors coming up next.
We have a lot of bad people that have to get out of this country. We're going to get them out. They go around killing people and hurting people, and they're going to be out of this country so fast your head will spin.
I'm not flip-flopping. We want to come up with a really fair but firm answer. It has to be very firm. But we want to come up with something fair.
Well, that's Donald Trump doubling down that he says he is not flip-flopping on immigration, he insists. But we're learning now that he's delaying that major speech on immigration that he was supposed to give in Colorado on Thursday. You know, that postponement comes amid reports that he is changing his proposal on booting the 11 million illegal immigrants with that so-called deportation force. Here's what he had to say about that force back in November.
Are you going to have a massive deportation force?
You're going to have a deportation force, and you're going to do it humanely. They're going back where they came. If they came from a certain country, they're going to be brought back to that country. That's the way it's supposed to be. Now, they can come back, but they have to come back legally.
Now, Boris Epshteyn joins us now as a senior advisor to the Trump campaign. Boris, welcome. Why is he changing his stance?
It's not a change. And if you notice, he said that everything will be done humanely. So here are the steps.
But he's backtracking. He's not talking about a deportation force now. Where did that go?
Here are the steps. The first step will be to deport all illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, core criminals.
How are they going to do that? Is there going to be a force to do that he talked about?
We're going to be laying out the specifics over the next several weeks. It'll be a plan that is fully detailed. That Donald Trump delivers out there.
Well, so he used the words rounding up people. He talked about a force, like a new immigration agency going after taking these people out and kicking them out. He is backtracking from that. He is changing his tone.
He's absolutely not backtracking. He's absolutely not changing. All he's saying is he's clarifying that the first step will be to take those people who are illegal immigrants, who are criminals, get them out of this country. The exact specifics on how will be detailed over the next several weeks. The next step then will be to make sure that we deal with illegal immigrants who are here in a way that's humane, but also enforces the laws and enforces the Constitution.
But he got a lot of attention, back in November when he talked about this deportation force. Is he going to rely on the police, on customs, the way the Obama administration does now? Look, they have removed about 250,000 illegal immigrants from this
George
country.
W. Bush removed a lot as well. So what Donald Trump is saying is that he will first of all, remove the illegal immigrants who are criminals, and then second, work within the laws that we have on the books now, as well as potentially put new laws in place and new entities in place to make sure we're enforcing the laws in the books and protect the American worker, American people.
How is he going to do that? The Border Patrol Union, for example, has endorsed him. They're down on some of their numbers by a few hundred. I was down at the Texas border. Is he going to beef up customs? Is he going to beef up immigration? Is he going to have this so-called deportation force by another name used through the existing resources and assets now?
Donald Trump is unquestionably the law and order candidate. So he will make sure that resources are absolutely beefed up for all law enforcement in this country. And that absolutely includes Border Patrol. So that'll be a big part of the initiative. And again, we'll be laying out the specifics over the next several weeks. But it will not be a change from what Donald Trump has been saying all along, which is take those illegal immigrants who are criminals, get them out of the country right away.
Quickly, final answer. When will he give the speech? He's supposed to have it on Thursday.
Listen, it'll be over the next couple of weeks. It's an agile campaign, Eric. And the bottom line is the American people care about the 15,000 emails that just came out about Hillary Clinton. And we need a special prosecutor to make sure that she is prosecuted impartially and fairly. Barack Obama cannot do that. Loretta Lynch cannot as well.
All right, Boris. A lot going on today, Boris.
Absolutely.
From the immigration to the emails. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
Martha?
So staying on the topic of Donald Trump, he is now seeking support from minority voters, saying that inner cities have been turned into, quote, war zones by Democratic policies. So how will that message go over, and will it work for him? And under fire as never before seen emails reveal her State Department gave special access to Clinton Foundation donors. But this apparent quid pro quo may be just part of the Clinton business model. Bill McGurn writing today in the Wall Street Journal this: the Clintons are unique in having an ex-president with a spouse in play, not only as Secretary of State, but possibly as president herself. And if you are a foreign government or a wealthy businessman, a donation to the Clinton Foundation might look like an excellent investment at just about any price. Steve Hayes joins us now, senior writer for the Weekly Standard and a Fox News contributor. Steve, good morning. Good to have you with us. The Clinton campaign would like everyone to believe that this has been investigated and it's done and people need to move on. This editorial this morning by Bill McGurn points to reasons why perhaps that is not a great idea.
Yeah, no, there's no question that we shouldn't be moving on. We're seeing new revelations about the interplay between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department on virtually a daily basis now. And again, this isn't speculation. This isn't something that's coming from Republicans launching accusations without the facts to support them. These are things that we're seeing in black and white in emails between State Department officials, including Hillary Clinton, discussing what would be done for Clinton Foundation donors. I mean, this is a huge story. It's a huge problem, and it's the kind of story I think that would have potentially sunk any other campaign in any normal election year.
But the argument from the Clinton campaign, Steve, is that the foundation has done a lot of good in the world, and that nobody was ever given anything with the understanding, no donation was accepted with the understanding that it would parlay anyone in government from another country to get what they wanted from the State Department, that there's no actual evidence of a connection.
Well, as to the first argument, it's interesting and maybe nice that the Clinton Foundation has done good work. It's also totally irrelevant to the question at hand. The question at hand is whether favors were exchanged for donations made, whether explicitly or implicitly. And the irony to me, I spent a better part of the morning this morning going back and rereading the transcript of Hillary Clinton's nomination hearing from January of 2009. And then Senator Dick Lugar, Republican from Indiana, said that the major focus of the nomination, of Hillary Clinton's nomination to be Secretary of State, was the potential conflict of interest between the Clinton Foundation and her service, because foreign governments might think that they could be purchasing entree into the State Department by donating to the Clinton Foundation. And that's precisely what we've seen, and it's what makes this so stunning and so reckless by the Clintons. We knew this was going to be a problem. They knew this was going to be a problem. They had to draft a special memorandum of understanding between the Obama administration and the Clinton Foundation in order to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. Well, here you have something that goes well beyond the appearance of impropriety. You have actual impropriety, and it's in black and white. The Clinton State Department doing favors for donors because they're donors to the Clinton Foundation.
You know, there was also a lot of concern in the Obama administration about the foundation when they decided to offer her the Secretary of State position, and you talk about the confirmation hearing that followed that. But the Obama administration also was concerned that there would be this appearance, at least, and as you contend, evidence that there was special treatment given to people if they gave money to the foundation. So that was a concern from the White House as well. Here's one more quote from the McGurn piece this morning. We're asked to believe that it was somehow an accident that so many of the millions former President Bill Clinton raked in from speaking fees would come from companies, countries, or people who had business before a State Department run by his wife. And it beggars belief to think all these dollars were being given out without an expectation that there would be something in return.
Yeah, exactly right. And we know from the emails that it wasn't just that these donors sought access to the State Department, but that they got access to the State Department. And again, explicitly, directly, because they had given to the Clinton Foundation. That is discussed in the emails. So there's no question that at least on that level there's a quid pro quo. I think beyond that you have a whole series of additional questions, some of which you discussed with James Rosen earlier this hour. I mean, why was it that the head of the Clinton Foundation had, as James put it, exponentially more phone messages left for Cheryl Mills, the Chief of Staff of the State Department? And why was it that Cheryl Mills, as Chief of Staff of the State Department, traveled to New York to interview potential new leaders for the Clinton Foundation? I mean, remember, Hillary Clinton in July of this year said there was absolutely no connection, those were her words, absolutely no connection between her work at the State Department and what the Clinton Foundation did. We can say definitively that that was a lie, it was untrue, it's not supported by any evidence, in fact, it's contradicted, and I think that's the reason that you have so many people and hopefully so many journalists continuing to look into this.
Steve, thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks, Martha.
You know, boom, take no prisoners, or are you going to be a little bit more measured?
Well, I don't want to really say that. I'm not sure exactly which way I'm going to go, but I may be the way I was, and I may be a much different person. I can't tell you.
All right.
I don't think I'd tell you. You know what? If I knew, I don't think I'd tell you.
So what will this matchup be like? Alexander Smith is the president of the College Republican National Committee. Jessica Tarloff, a Democratic pollster and strategist and senior political analyst for Schoen Consulting. Alexander, Jessica, welcome. Man, oh man. Talk about the rumble in the jungle. The thriller in Manila. This is going to be at Hofstra. Alexandra, let's start with Donald Trump. What first does he have to do?
I think that, it would be a huge mistake for Hillary Clinton to underestimate Donald Trump. Don't forget, Hillary Clinton was operating in a rigged system where the debates were around holidays. I remember wrapping Christmas gifts around the Democratic debate.
Yeah, Saturday nights.
They were on
they were like buried on Saturday night. Bernie Sanders complained about that.
Yep, and she only had one serious opponent. The rest of them were polling in single digits, whereas Donald Trump competed in prime time, much more watched debates than the Democratic debates. There were more of them, and the candidates that he was competing with were all atop the polls at some point in the race. So the stakes were a little bit higher on the Republican side. I think that one thing he could do to prepare for the debates is watch the 2000 Senate debates between Hillary Clinton and Rick Lazio for the New York Senate race. That was that year. If you'll remember, Rick Lazio sort of marched over to Hillary Clinton's podium with that pledge and demanded that that she sign it. And if you'll remember, the reviews were sort of this this thought that maybe it was
I was in Buffalo. I was up in Buffalo covering that moment, and when he walked over to give her a piece of paper to try to sign the pledge, I mean, Donald Trump could be much ruder. Are you concerned and worried in terms of his tenor or attitude that it could go wrong?
I think that he should be himself. I think that what the American people are looking for is that they're looking for something that's unscripted. They're looking for an alternative from Washington. They're tired of the old sort of talking points, tested poll, or focus group tested message that comes from politicians. So I think that these are going to be some of the most watched debates in our history.
Sure. Jessica, I mean, let me get to Jessica. She's got to get a chance in here. This is what it's going to be like. It's going to be like bam, 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 Jessica.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think Donald Trump definitely needs to watch himself and not come off as rude, and certainly as rude as he was in the debates, the GOP debates. I don't think that calling her Crooked Hillary to her face is going to be effective at this point, because I think that she can stand there. First of all, she's shown herself to be very resilient in the face of these kinds of attacks, and to just kind of say, all right, let him run his mouth. And I think that she's going to be a hardcore wonk, which is what Hillary Clinton does best. And Donald Trump is lacking in specifics on all of his policies. I mean, he was the illegal immigration candidate
but
right now.
He may have specifics by September 26th. He's been giving policy speeches.
Yeah, but they're still light on. I mean, even though they can't appraise his new economic plan at this point with the details that have been laid out, it's a problem. This pushing back the immigration speech from Thursday to an undisclosed time because they're not sure what's going on. And Donald Trump ran on mass deportation and undoing birthright citizenship, for that matter, and now he has to have a think about it. Hillary Clinton's been preparing for this her entire life, so he really shouldn't take it lightly. And when he jokes with Bill O'Reilly about it, I obviously think that it's funny, but he should have a more serious strategy. She's a very serious woman.
Well, she was, Mrs. Clinton was joking with Jimmy Kimmel, talking about
But she's so adorable.
Elementary school. I mean, that's a direct dig at Donald Trump, saying that she's thinking back to elementary school, basically calling him a child.
Well, and I think that it's one of those things where I think she's she's underestimating where the public is at right now. They're looking for someone to speak simply to them, to speak directly. I think we saw in the Republican debates, there was a lot of substance in those debates. There was a lot of talk of policy. And in the end, that he was the one that prevailed. Obviously, this is a general election. It's a different crowd. But at the same time, the independents are the ones that are up for grabs. And I think that they're the ones that are especially frustrated with the gridlock that they see in Washington. And Hillary Clinton is a creature of Washington.
Well, we're up against the clock now. It's going to be one of the most amazing moments is whatever happens when it's over. All the families go on the stage and they all shake hands. So you're going to see Ivanka and Chelsea, who are friends anyway.
Right, they are.
Frenemies.
I think they're actually friends. Melania and Bill Clinton, that hug is what I'm really focused on there.
Okay, I'm not going there. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Take care. Right, Martha?
Hadn't thought about that. All right, let's go to Jenna Lee and find out what's coming up on Happening Now this morning. Hi, Jenna.
I haven't thought about that either, but now we all are, aren't we, Martha? All right, some big developments today in the race for the White House as Hillary Clinton comes under new fire over her private email server and those other emails that are out. Also, some new questions about the Clinton Foundation and its dealing with the State Department. We'll ask the question, does it matter? Also, new questions about Donald Trump and changes to his schedule this week. We'll talk to the Trump campaign coming up top of the hour.